This video is about the world of the tabletop wargame BLKOUT by Enemy Spotted Studios. To know the history of a thing is to know its context. Victory in battle depends on context. Sometimes it's really helpful to understand the lore and vibe of your enemies in order to better understand their abilities and tactics. And sometimes you just want something to watch or listen to while you're painting up a bunch of tiny men. I'm here for you, for either one. I like both. If you're here for context and world building, I see you. You're a connoisseur of context. Good stuff. Sun Tzu said something like, if you know your enemy and know yourself, you won't be in peril in 100 battles. Or the way my dice roll, like 1 or 2. Shit. The BLKOUT is in the future. Our story starts in the past. This is a story about how humanity left Earth, and all the things we brought with us. I'm going to warn you that this is going to be kind of boring for a bit. The 21st century was just slightly different from our own. They had 9/11, Shrek 2, the Arab Spring, Shrek 3. The UN was more powerful. Technology was a little more advanced. When the Russians invaded Ukraine in 2016, they deployed a few soldiers with kinetic suites. Some troops had advanced helmets with heads-up displays, IFF trackers to prevent accidents. In 2022, the Very Large Array picked up a mysterious signal from the Alpha Centauri system. You've probably heard of it. It's got 3 stars. Rigel Kentaurus and Ptolemon are kinda close to our sun, and they form a binary star system. A bit of a drive away, about the distance from the sun to Pluto, is Proxima Centauri. Proxima is the only star with any planets, which is a problem because Proxima is also a red dwarf and a flare star with intense emissions of electromagnetic radiation that can strip the atmosphere right off a planet. And yet, here was this unexplained MRB. Astronomers Alana Black and Oliver Lemuel led the team in researching the project. A new planet is located, hiding behind a gas giant. It's named Able, after their initials. You don't normally name planets like that, but they sadly died in a helicopter accident the next month. NASA deploys more powerful space telescopes up in secret. In public, they roll out a campaign. Posters of astronauts, TV spots of kids building rockets in classrooms. A flag gets planted in the American mind. Space is cool again. At the end of the year, Avatar: The Way of Water is released. Unfortunately, momentum gets sidetracked by 2023. In 2023, some shit that might get me demonetized happens in Israel, its neighbors, and occupied territories. Iran sorts Hezbollah with such vigor that Israel's invasion is seriously slowed. Qatar joins the rapidly expanding war on the side of Iran. 2024, the Olympics. Iran, Qatar, Ba'athist Syria, and allied groups form the PAC, the Pan-Arab Coalition. It's not a name I would have chosen, given that Iran is 80% Iranian peoples, mostly Persians, with the rest being Turkic and Arabs, and that's like a much smaller percentage. But maybe it was a name that the American media used and it got stuck. Political pundits hit panic mode. There's an election coming up, and the president is not very popular. The United States joins the war. The new coalition looks like a history textbook. UK, France, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, and I have no idea what the election looks like. 2025, those NASA PR programs bear fruit, and wealthy elites show a growing anxiety over nuclear war and climate change. Turns out that the USA has in fact been funding advanced terraforming research for years. They always knew that climate control would be a key element of geopolitical dominance. In spring 25, that technology is secretly launched into orbit around Mars. Specialized domes get built on the surface to hotbox that technology, and heavily censored images are distributed. Earth's problems start to look small when compared to the vast emptiness of Mars. Later that year, Putin's military finally stumbles into Kyiv. 2026, the Great Middle Eastern War ends with a bang. A nuke goes off during the coalition's invasion of Tehran. Casualties are unimaginable. Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, the UAE, and Armenia joined the PAC during the peace process, and they get renamed the Pan-Arab Oil Coalition. Makes even less sense now. Hard to imagine that Saudi Arabia and Iran ever agreed to this, but maybe there was a change in leadership after the nuclear weapon. I don't know. They force a peace treaty, and European countries brace for impact. Next year, impact hits, the war stops, the dying does not. Millions flee the fallout of the Middle East, the guerrilla warfare in Ukraine, climate change from everywhere. Refugees flood into Europe. By 2029, Europe's spine cracks. This is another eyebrow raiser, but at some point this history leads to giant piloted robots, so I'll allow it. In this world, the UN sees its chance. They hold a vote to form a new super republic. A lot of nations sign on, most of Europe, India, a few others who had nothing left to lose. This is how the United Nation became a superpower. Now with an army, with a big old census. Avatar 4 is released a critical and commercial success. 2030, the first manned colony on Mars. Wow, NASA reignites its interest in Able. They confirm what everyone was already hoping. There's a planet, and it seems habitable. The Endeavour mission deploys thousands of interstellar microprobes using NASA's Orbital Laser Propulsion Array, or OLPA. aimed at reaching Able within a decade. In a move to regain international favor and appease the UN, the US government pitches the LEAP, or Leaving Earth program, to the UN and offers to financially and geographically lead the construction of the colony ship and space station, citing increased security and reduced risks of sabotage. The UN agrees. The 10-year timeline begins. They're leaving Earth, and it's a program. 2031, countries and corporations throughout the world push the largest organized information operation in history. This is the HOPE campaign, and it convinces millions of people to get in line for a one-way trip to Able. Oliver Espinosa, an American tech billionaire, announces cryosleep will be available for the journey for the middle class and wealthy friends. It might be carcinogenic, but it's fine. That's enough to get half the planet to start dreaming in 30-year increments. Avatar 5 is released, and James Cameron's dream is complete. I wonder if he's in the first wave, if he's going to see what the real version of Pandora is like. 2032, big year. The UN enacts the LEAP Act, taking unilateral control of the Able colonization mission. With it, the decision is made. The UN and PAOC will land first. The rest, that being corporations, NGOs, national fleets, will travel with the flagship, then wait 2 years. Officially, it's about stability. Unofficially, the LEAP Act is about getting there first. The PAOC agrees to help mine the planet's resources, claiming they are not interested in territory. They begin the Trailblazer missions. Trailblazer 1 sent a satellite and a lander to Able to scout for future manned missions, following up on the NASA launches. These things cost a lot of money. It's a long way to travel. Maybe the LEAP is too much work. The Five Eyes nations doubled down on terraforming Mars instead. They said that advancing tech on Mars and the mining colonies in the asteroid belt would be valuable testbeds for equipment and technology that could help Able. But it's coming along pretty well. Maybe we don't even need the big leap. 2034. Besides, by next year, 20% of Mars is green. Billionaires compete for Martian wheat. First Olympus Mons steak sells for the price of a small jet. All proceeds go back into the machine. Terraforming becomes self-sustaining. Not long after, research ships from every major player set out for Able. These are manned, the Trailblazer 2 program. The idea is to test soil and scout terrain. They land and set up shop, but when the main colony ships arrive years later, they are missing and are never found. And for a lot of people, that's probably okay because Mars is hopping. The first to move there are members of the armed services from Canada, Australia, New Zealand. The majority are Americans, though. There are something like 350,000 people there in a few years. They're on the ground and in orbit, working mostly in kind of a civil engineering way, mostly military. Pretty soon the groundwork is laid and emigration to Mars is open to the general public. Anyone can apply, although not everyone gets in. We're looking for young people, preferably with families, preferring candidates who are good at teamwork and flexibility. Still, those that don't meet the criteria aren't denied, they just get bumped back in line. Maybe it's being far-sighted, or maybe it's the fact that all these countries started out under the heel of colonialism, but Mars is taking shape as an independent power. The United Martian Protectorate stays close with its homeland, even if it gained autonomy. The Peregrine Exofighter, probably the best strike craft for many decades to come, was one of the many military technologies that Mars, and their American parents, develop in this time. They were thinking of sticking them on the American contingent for the first wave, but the rules said no real weapons, just some point defenses. 2040. It's been 10 years, and the flagship UNS Hope is ready. The first wave launches. 250,000 people leave Earth behind and begin a 30-year journey to a planet they've never seen. They're surrounded by the national ships. Admiral Carson is in charge of the American contingent from the USS Neil Armstrong. Roscosmos sends a large fleet, as does China. The coalition sends the Musafir, or Traveler in Arabic. The others are corporate. The Polish mining megacorp P3 dispatches the Poland, a mining ship so big it dwarfs even the Hope. For the next 30 years, the First Wave Fleet and the Hope move silently through space. They're not idle. Many advanced weapons and devices are developed during this time, like the fearsome Twin Moons project. The 2040s are kind of the turning point for our solar system. Time passes. Back on Earth, the first wave is out of sight and out of mind. There are so many other crises to deal with. The PAOC and the United Nations start to butt heads. Pakistan and India go to war with the coalition and UN on different sides. By the time peace is signed, the millions are dead and 1 billion are displaced. Israel gets hit by rogue nukes. No one claims responsibility. Everyone picks a side. The UN and PAOC strike their own energy deal off the books. By 2047, scientists predict major flooding of global coastlines due to the temperature rise and weather conditions created by nuclear fallout. A lot of people believe that Earth is not going to make it to the end of the century. You kind of know the drill. You've seen this sort of sci-fi story before. But hey, there's always Mars. Mars was really starting to pop off. They had formalized the UMP, the United Martian Protectorate. The shipyards over Deimos started to churn out these gigantic Spruance-class assault ships, and they were absolutely not meant for defense. Filled with railguns, launch bays, drop tubes, come on. These are made to invade somewhere. Some of these were set up for a second wave of colonization, although the United Nations protested. The UMP said that they had seen rumors that the UN was arming all of its colony ships, including the Prosperity, with some pretty serious firepower. Speaking of firepower, Mars gets to test theirs out on a collapsing Earth. It feels like at this point a third of the population are refugees or are in deep trouble. States are collapsing left and right. Remnants of the Indian government and some powerful African states even invade China to support a starving and irradiated populace. Mars figures it's a good excuse to test out their guys and play with their toys. Around 2050, someone gets an idea. If you can't save the world, just leave it. Even though Earth sucks, people still live there and their stuff is already there, so it's not like the entire population signs up for the one-way trip. But a lot of them do, like millions of people. I don't blame them. It's easier than ever to pay some bribes or make some choices to bring some contraband on board. Time passes. Soon, the second wave departs alongside the UNS Prosperity. There they go. See you later. Good luck. Back on Earth, though, there's climate destruction, tornadoes, bad weather, more mosquitoes. All of it makes it feel like the Earth is kind of winding down. By 2058, members of the Federation of Republics, that being South Korea, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and Mexico, are fully on board with Mars. Gotta be rough for the UK, though. First, they didn't get to do a colonialism on Mars, and then they lose their monarchy. Mars flourishes for the next 12 years. Mars swells in population, as did the rest of the solar system. The UN began work on a third wave of ships, but UMP Intel noted that this fleet was abandoning any protest of peace. This fleet was armed and dangerous. There was no sign of life from Able either. Bad news since they had invested so much into that first wave all those years ago. Throughout the 2060s, the republics and other components of Mars dedicated more and more funding for military endeavors. UMP navies trained closer to a dying Earth. Relations began to sour as they performed fleet maneuvers at Lagrange points and Marines tested their abilities on space stations in orbit. 2065, 25 years into the journey, the first wave receives transponder signals. They indicate landing zones and terraformers have been set up and some success has been made in readying the planet for their arrival, but there's just no people. Whatever happened to the brave people who signed up for Trailblazer 2 is still unknown. 2069, 1 year before landfall, the United Nations makes an announcement. The UNS Hope and the accompanying UN fleet all have experimental and very lethal weapons, and they intend to very aggressively enforce the LEAP Act. In 2070, on final approach to Able, several Russian vessels say, you know what, you gotta let us in there first. The LEAP Act gave the United Nations and all its constituents 2 extra years to build up on Able before anyone else even got a chance to set foot on the planet. The Russians say, no way, man. They took a few shots and they get punished for it, real badly. The Russian ships that do survive break contact and land in the far side of Able's moons. And we'll see those boys in red again in the far future. And so we get to 2070. I haven't described a giant titan, nor a titan fall, and this video is ending, which means that there is going to be a part 2, a much more interesting part 2, maybe. The UN and its allies like the PAOC begin landing en masse, grabbing the massive Senriv 1 crater complex, building a space elevator out of the colony ship, launching satellites, and having a great time. And I'm sure everyone else back on Earth is in for a treat too. Thanks for watching. This is part of a short series on the game BLKOUT. Let me know what you think. That's pretty much it. Thank you.